Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to Mara Johnson. They thought the chair had taken his power. They thought the wheels beneath him had replaced the fear his footsteps once carried through marble halls. They thought the man who had once silenced boardrooms, restaurants, courtrooms, and back rooms with nothing but a glance had finally been reduced to something small. But they were wrong. A throne does not need legs to command a room. That evening, the Castellano mansion glowed like a palace built out of secrets. Golden chandeliers burned above polished floors. Crystal glasses caught the light. Violins murmured softly from hidden speakers, elegant enough to cover the whispers, but not strong enough to bury them. Everyone had come to see Dante Castellano, not to honor him, to measure what was left of him. 3 months earlier, Dante had been the most feared man in the city. Men lowered their voices when they said his name. Lawyers answered his calls before the first ring ended. Politicians smiled too quickly when he entered private rooms. Even his enemies respected the silence that followed him. Then came the accident. No one spoke of it clearly. Some said betrayal. Some said punishment. Some said God had finally reached down and touched a man no police officer could touch. All anyone knew was that Dante Castellano had returned home alive, but not walking. And in the world he came from, mercy was rare. Weakness was fatal. The front doors opened at exactly 8 o'clock. The room shifted. Conversations died one by one, like candles pinched between fingers. Every head turned toward the entrance. Servants froze with trays in their hands. Men in tailored suits straightened their shoulders. Women lifted champagne to their lips, but forgot to drink. Then he appeared. Dante Castellano entered the grand hall in a black wheelchair. His suit was charcoal, cut perfectly across his broad shoulders. His dark hair was combed back with the same ruthless precision as before. The scar near his temple had faded, but not disappeared. His hands rested on the armrests, still and controlled. Behind him walked no nurse, no doctor, no pity, only silence. But the silence was different now. Before, people went quiet because they feared what Dante might do. Tonight, some went quiet because they were trying not to smile. Mara Johnson saw it. She stood near the west wall, holding a silver tray of wine glasses. She was new to the mansion, barely 4 weeks into the job, a black woman in a simple black uniform, her curls pinned neatly at the back of her head, her shoes polished though the soles were worn thin. Most people in that room did not see her. That was the privilege of the powerful. They could look straight through the people who served them. But Mara had learned long ago that invisible people often saw the most. She saw the nephew who leaned toward his cousin and whispered behind his glass. She saw the old capo who looked away too quickly, as if ashamed to witness the fall of a king. She saw Dante's former fiancée, Isabella, standing near the piano in a silver dress, her eyes sliding over the wheelchair before reaching his face. Not grief, not love, calculation. Mara's fingers tightened around the tray. Dante rolled forward slowly. Each turn of the wheel seemed louder than the music. No one rushed to greet him. No one knew whether to bow, clap, hug him, or pretend nothing had changed. So they did the cruelest thing. They stared. Dante stopped at the center of the room. For one long second, the mansion held its breath. Then his younger brother, Vincent Castellano, stepped forward with a smile too warm to be honest. "Dante," he said, opening his arms. "You look well." The pause before the word well was small, but everyone heard it. Dante looked at him. Just looked. No anger. No embarrassment. No pleading need to prove himself. Only those dark, unreadable eyes. And in that moment, while everyone else saw the chair, Mara saw the man inside it. She saw the way his gaze moved across the room, counting every face, every hesitation, every whispered betrayal. She saw his fingers tap once against the armrest, not from nerves, but from memory, strategy, control. This was not a broken man. This was a dangerous man being underestimated. Vincent placed a hand on the back of Dante's wheelchair. Mara saw Dante's jaw tighten. Not much, just enough. "Let me help you, brother," Vincent said. The room smiled politely. Mara did not, because Dante had not asked for help. And sometimes disrespect arrives dressed as kindness. Before Vincent could push the chair, Mara stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly against the marble. Every eye turned to her, as if a painting had suddenly spoken. She lowered the tray slightly and said, calm and clear. Mr. Castellano prefers to move himself. The room froze. Vincent's smile hardened. Dante turned his head toward her. For the first time that night, someone had not spoken about his weakness. Someone had defended his choice. Mara met his eyes, steady and respectful. Not pitying, not afraid. Dante's hand returned to the wheel, and slowly, without looking away from her, he moved himself forward. The room went silent. The dinner began with silver knives, crystal glasses, and cruelty polished so well it almost looked like concern. Dante Castellano sat at the head of the long mahogany table, where he had always sat. The chair had been removed before his arrival, leaving space for his wheelchair as if the room itself had been forced to adjust to him. But the people around him had not adjusted. They smiled too carefully. They spoke too softly. They passed plates around him instead of to him. They asked Vincent questions that should have been answered by Dante. Business questions, family questions, questions about security, territories, lawyers, shipments, investments. Each one landed like a quiet insult. Dante did not interrupt. He sat still beneath the chandelier, his face carved from stone, his hands resting on the armrests. The candlelight cut sharp shadows across his cheekbones. The scar near his temple looked darker now, like a signature left by betrayal. Mara stood by the sideboard with two other servants, refilling water glasses when needed, replacing plates without sound. She had been trained to be silent in wealthy rooms. But silence did not mean blindness. She saw everything. She saw Vincent lean forward when an older man named Salvatore Moretti asked, "What are we doing about the East Harbor accounts?" Before Dante could speak, Vincent answered, "We're reviewing them." We. The word made several men at the table glance toward Dante, waiting to see if he would correct it. He did not. Vincent smiled, encouraged by the silence. "We have to be realistic," he continued, spreading his napkin across his lap like a king settling into another man's throne. "My brother needs rest." The doctors were very clear. Stress is not good for his recovery. Dante's eyes remained on his wine glass. Mara watched his right thumb press once against the armrest. Once. Controlled. Measured. Not weakness. Restraint. Isabella sat halfway down the table, glowing in a pale silver dress, diamonds at her throat. Months ago, people had whispered she would become Mrs. Castellano. Tonight, she looked at Dante with the gentle sadness people reserve for beautiful things they no longer wanted. "You mustn't push yourself," she said sweetly. "Everyone understands." Dante lifted his gaze to her. "Do they?" The table went quiet. Isabella's smile flickered, but Vincent laughed before the silence could become dangerous. "Of course they do," he said. "We're family." That word hung in the air like perfume covering smoke. Mara stepped forward to refill Dante's glass. As she leaned close, she saw the reflection of the table in the dark surface of his untouched wine. Every face appeared there, warped by the curve of the glass. All of them watching, all of them waiting, not for his recovery, for his surrender. Then came the first open cut. A younger cousin, Luca, barely 28 and too proud of the watch on his wrist, tilted back in his chair. "I mean, let's be honest," he said, his voice lazy from wine. "The city is different now. People smell weakness faster than blood." His mother hissed his name under her breath. But Luca did not stop. He looked directly at Dante's wheelchair. "And if we don't make changes soon, others will make them for us." The room froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. A servant near the kitchen doors lowered her eyes. Even Vincent went still, though not from shock. From calculation. Dante slowly turned his head. "Is that what you smell, Luca?" The young man swallowed. But pride is often louder than wisdom. "I'm only saying what everyone is thinking." No one defended Dante. That was what Mara noticed most. Not the insult. The silence after it. Dante looked around the table. One by one, his eyes passed over men who once stood when he entered, men who once kissed his ring, men who once begged for his protection when enemies circled their doors. Now they stared at their plates. The chandelier hummed softly above them. Outside, rain touched the windows like fingers asking to be let in. Luca gave a nervous little laugh, trying to recover the room. "Come on, Uncle Dante. You know I respect you. It's just things changed." His eyes dropped again to the wheelchair. "People don't fear a man they have to push." The words struck the table harder than a gunshot. Mara's breath caught. Not because Luca had spoken, because Dante had not moved. For one terrible second, she saw something pass through his face. Not pain exactly. Not shame. Memory. The memory of walking into rooms and watching powerful men lower their heads. The memory of being untouchable. The memory of having a body that obeyed him before the world dared disobey. Then it vanished. His face became calm again. Too calm. Vincent placed his hand over Dante's wrist, gentle enough for the table to admire, firm enough for Mara to hate. "Brother," he murmured, "let it go. He's young." Dante looked down at Vincent's hand. Slowly, deliberately, Vincent removed it. Mara stepped forward before she realized she was moving. She did not speak this time. She simply reached for Dante's plate, which no one had bothered to place within comfortable reach, and moved it closer to him. A small act, almost invisible, but Dante noticed. So did Vincent. His eyes sharpened on her. Mara kept her face lowered, but her hands stayed steady. Dante picked up his knife and fork without assistance. He cut into the meat with quiet precision, as if proving nothing, because kings did not explain their crowns. Then he looked at Luca. "You are right about one thing," Dante said softly. The room leaned in. "Things have changed." Luca's smile returned too quickly. "But," Dante was not finished. "When I walked, fools hid their thoughts from me." He placed the knife down. "Now they bring them to my table." No one breathed. Mara stood beside the sideboard, her heart pounding beneath her uniform. For the first time that night, the room remembered his voice. But not enough. Not yet. Top of form, bottom of form. Mara understands what it means to be looked through. Mara Johnson knew that kind of silence. Not the silence of peace. The other kind. The silence people used when they had already decided you were no longer worth speaking to directly. She had heard it years before in a small hospital room in Atlanta, where the walls smelled of bleach, old coffee, and prayers that had gone unanswered too many times. Her father, Ezekiel Johnson, had been lying in a narrow bed after the stroke took half his body and most of his speech. Before that, he had been a tall man with a laugh that could fill a church basement. He fixed cars, carried groceries for elderly neighbors, taught Mara how to change a tire before she learned how to drive. He was the kind of man who shook hands firmly and looked people in the eye, because he believed dignity was something you carried even when your pockets were empty. Then one morning, his body betrayed him. And suddenly, everyone spoke about him like he had already left the room. Doctors stood at the foot of his bed and said things like, "He may not understand," while his eyes followed every word. Relatives leaned over him and said, "Poor Ezekiel," in voices dripping with pity, as if pity were kindness. Even strangers at the grocery store talked louder when they saw the wheelchair, as though weak legs meant weak hearing. But Mara had seen her father's eyes. She had seen the anger in them, the shame, the trapped intelligence of a man still inside himself, still listening, still remembering who he was, while the world kept reducing him to what he could no longer do. So when she looked at Dante Castellano sitting at the head of that mahogany table, surrounded by people pretending concern while sharpening knives behind their smiles, Mara felt something old rise in her chest. Not fear. Recognition. They were not just insulting his power. They were trying to erase him. After dinner, the guests drifted into the grand salon for coffee and expensive liquor. Laughter returned carefully, like servants cleaning up blood before morning. Men stood near the fireplace and lowered their voices. Women admired paintings they had seen 100 times. Vincent moved through them all with his hand on shoulders, his smile wide, his confidence growing. Dante remained near the tall windows overlooking the garden. Alone, rain moved down the glass in silver lines. Beyond it, the city glowed beneath storm clouds, alive and dangerous, still belonging to men who understood how quickly loyalty could rot. Mara carried a tray toward him. His coffee sat exactly as Sophia, the head housekeeper, had instructed, black, no sugar, porcelain cup, gold rim. But when Mara approached, she noticed the side table was too far from his right hand. Someone had placed it there without thinking. Or maybe they had thought. Maybe they wanted him to reach and fail. Mara said nothing. She simply set the tray down, moved the table 3 inches closer, turned the handle of the cup toward his hand, and stepped back. Dante looked at the cup, then at her. For a moment, neither spoke. "You do that often?" he asked. His voice was low, roughened by exhaustion, but still carrying that quiet edge that made powerful men stand straighter. "Do what, sir?" "Notice what everyone else misses." Mara kept her hands folded in front of her. only when everyone else is busy pretending not to see. Something in his face changed. Not softness. Dante Castellano did not soften easily, but the wall around his eyes shifted, just enough for her to glimpse the man behind the legend. Not the mafia boss. Not the wounded king at the table. Just a man tired of being handled like broken glass. You think they pity me? He asked. Mara looked across the room. Vincent was laughing now, one hand raised as if already giving orders in a house that was not his. No, sir, Mara said quietly. Pity still remembers a person is there. Dante's eyes returned to her. What do they feel then? Mara hesitated. The safe answer waited on her tongue. Something polite. Something harmless. Something that would let her walk back to the kitchen unnoticed. But her father's face came back to her. His eyes in that hospital bed, begging someone to speak truth. So Mara lifted her chin. They feel relieved, she said. The rain tapped harder against the glass. Dante did not blink. Mara continued, her voice calm but careful. A strong man makes people hide who they are. A wounded man makes them reveal it. Behind them, someone laughed too loudly. Dante heard it. Mara knew he did. His fingers curled once around the coffee cup, not trembling, not weak, controlled. You're very honest for someone in your position, he said. Mara met his gaze. My position doesn't make a lie taste better, Mr. Castellano. For the first time, the corner of Dante's mouth moved. Almost a smile. Almost dangerous. Across the salon, Vincent noticed them speaking. His expression darkened for half a second before the smile returned. Mara saw that too. Dante followed her glance. Then he looked back at her, and the air between them changed. He had realized something. She was not just kind. She was observant. And in a house full of traitors, that made her valuable. The room continued laughing behind them, warm and cruel and glittering under chandelier light. But by the window, in the sound of rain and porcelain touching wood, Dante Castellano began to understand that the only person truly seeing him was the woman everyone else had trained themselves to ignore. He asked her what no one else dared to answer by midnight. The mansion had emptied of laughter. The guests were gone. The crystal glasses had been collected. The candles in the grand salon had burned low, leaving small pools of melted wax on silver trays. Outside, the rain had softened into mist, pressing itself against the windows like a secret that refused to leave. Mara Johnson should have been in the staff quarters. Her shift had ended 20 minutes earlier, but there were always things wealthy people forgot they had touched. A napkin fallen beneath a chair. A ring of red wine on polished wood. A cigar left half-burned in a porcelain tray, its smoke curling upward like a ghost. She moved through the mansion, quietly, carrying a folded cloth and a bottle of wood polish, her shoes whispering over the marble. Then she saw the light beneath the library door. Thin, golden, still burning. Mara paused. The library was Dante Castellano's private room. Staff entered only when instructed. Even Sophia, who had worked in the mansion for 12 years, treated that door like it had teeth. Mara lifted her hand to knock, then lowered it. She should walk away. But before she could move, Dante's voice came from inside. Come in, Miss Johnson. Her breath caught. She had made no sound. At least, none she thought a man could hear through oak doors and storm-heavy silence. Slowly, Mara opened the door. The library smelled of leather, old paper, and smoke. Tall shelves climbed the walls from floor to ceiling. A green-shaded lamp glowed on the desk. Near the window, Dante sat alone in his wheelchair beside a chessboard carved from black and white marble. No bodyguards. No brother. No watching crowd. Just him. The man everyone had spent the evening pretending was finished. His jacket was gone now. His white shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbows, revealing strong forearms and the edge of a tattoo disappearing beneath the fabric. His tie hung loose at his throat. In the lamplight, the scar near his temple looked deeper. Not ugly. Earned. You work late, he said. Mara kept one hand on the door. I was cleaning the salon, sir. Were you? The question was soft. Too soft. Mara recognized the trap inside it. Powerful men rarely asked what they did not already suspect. She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. Yes, sir. Dante's eyes remained on the chessboard. A black king stood near the center, surrounded but not taken. White pieces pressed in from every side. To anyone else, the king looked trapped. But Mara had played enough with her father to know better. Some kings were most dangerous when they had nowhere left to run. Dante lifted one dark piece between two fingers. Everyone in this house thinks I'm weak now. Mara said nothing. He placed the piece down. What do you think? The room seemed to tighten around the question. Mara felt her pulse in her throat. This was not casual conversation. It was not curiosity. It was a blade laid gently on the table between them. She could lie. She could say, "No, sir." She could say, "They still respect you." She could say whatever kept her job, kept her safe, kept her invisible. But Dante Castellano was not asking for comfort. He was asking whether she had the courage to tell the truth. Mara looked at the chessboard again, then at him. "I think," she said carefully, "a weak man would need people to keep telling him he is strong." Dante's eyes rose to hers. Mara's fingers tightened around the cleaning cloth, but her voice stayed even. "You haven't asked anyone to do that." The silence after her words was so complete, she could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. Dante studied her face as if searching for flattery, finding none. "And what else do you think?" he asked. Mara swallowed. "I think they mistake stillness for surrender." Something moved behind his eyes. A shadow. Or approval. "Do you?" "Yes, sir." He leaned back slightly. "Why?" Mara looked toward the rain-dark window. For a moment, she was no longer in a mansion. She was back in a small apartment in Atlanta, watching her father struggle to button his shirt with one hand while relatives whispered in the kitchen about what he could no longer do. Because people see a chair and stop seeing the person. Because pity can be another kind of cruelty. Because help offered without respect feels like a hand around the throat. But she did not say all of that. Not yet. Instead, she said, because no one at dinner spoke freely until they thought you couldn't punish them for it. Dante went very still. Mara feared she had gone too far. Then he laughed once. Not warmly. Not loudly. Just a quiet, sharp sound that cut through the room like glass under a shoe. "You noticed that?" "Yes, sir." "You noticed Luca?" "Yes." "Vincent?" "Yes." "Isabella?" Mara hesitated only a fraction. "Yes, sir." Dante's gaze sharpened. "And what did you notice about Isabella?" Mara lowered her eyes for the first time. "That she looked at your chair before she looked at your face." The air changed. For a second, Dante's expression revealed nothing. Then his hand closed, slowly around the armrest. Not in pain. In control. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped. Most people would have been afraid to say that. Mara lifted her chin. "With respect, Mr. Castellano, most people in this house are afraid of the wrong things." A long silence followed. Outside, thunder rolled low over the city. Dante looked at her for a time that felt longer than it was. Then he reached toward the chessboard and turned it slightly, so the trapped black king faced her. "Tell me, Miss Johnson," he said, "what would you do from here?" Mara stepped closer before she could stop herself. She studied the board. White had more pieces, more space, more confidence. But confidence made people careless. After a moment, Mara pointed to a black bishop near the edge. "I'd stop defending the king," she said. Dante's brow lifted. "And I'd let them think they were winning." Her finger moved to the bishop. "Then I'd take the queen." Dante looked at the board, then back at her. For the first time since the accident, a real smile touched his mouth. Small, cold, alive. "Good," he said. The word was quiet, but it filled the library. Mara stepped back, suddenly aware of how dangerous the room had become. Not dangerous to her. Dangerous to everyone who had laughed too soon. Dante picked up the black bishop and moved it across the board. White's queen fell with a soft click. The sound echoed like judgment. And somewhere deep inside the mansion, unseen by those already sleeping, the man they thought was broken began planning his return. The family prepared to take his throne by morning. The mansion had learned to smile again. Not because anything had healed. Because predators preferred daylight when they wanted their cruelty to look respectable. The rain had stopped before dawn, leaving the gardens washed clean beneath a pale gray sky. Servants moved through the halls with quiet efficiency. Silver was polished. Curtains were drawn open. Breakfast was arranged in the sunroom as if the night before had been nothing more than another elegant family gathering. But Mara Johnson knew better. The house felt different. The air had weight. Every whisper stopped when she entered a room. Every phone call lowered itself behind closed doors. Men who had laughed too loudly the night before now walked with purpose, their shoes clicking across marble like countdowns. Something was coming. Mara felt it before she understood it. She was in the kitchen rinsing coffee cups when Sophia, the head housekeeper, entered with her face pale, and tight. Mara, she said quietly, stay out of the East Wing today. Mara looked up from the sink. Why? Sophia's eyes moved toward the hallway, then back. Because people like us survive by not asking that question. That should have been enough. For most of Mara's life, it had been enough. Keep your head down. Do your work. Don't make powerful people uncomfortable. Don't listen too closely. Don't care too loudly. But Dante Castellano's voice from the library still echoed in her mind. What would you do from here? And her own answer had followed her into sleep. Let them think they were winning. Then take the queen. Mara dried her hand slowly. Is Mr. Castellano in danger? She asked. Sophia's lips pressed together. In this house? She whispered. Always. Then she left before courage could become confession. An hour later, Mara was sent to collect linen from the second-floor guest corridor. The East Wing was supposed to be avoided, but wealthy houses had strange ways of turning orders into accidents. A basket was left where it should not have been. A door stood slightly open. Voices slipped through the crack. Mara stopped. She recognized Vincent first. Smooth. Warm. Poisonous. We do this tonight, he said, before Dante changes his mind about appearing strong. Another man answered, older and rougher. Salvatore Moretti. The council won't accept it without his signature. Vincent laughed softly. The council will accept what we tell them to accept. My brother is not fit to lead. The doctors will confirm emotional instability. The lawyers have prepared everything. Mara's fingers tightened around the linen basket. A third voice spoke. And if he refuses to sign? Vincent's silence was brief. Too brief. Then we help him understand mercy. No one in the room asked what that meant. That frightened Mara more than the words themselves. She leaned closer, barely breathing. Papers shifted. A glass touched wood. Someone opened a folder. Transfer of operational authority, Vincent continued. Medical recommendation. Temporary leadership appointment. Salvatore snorted. Temporary. Another soft laugh. Of course, Vincent said. All permanent things begin temporarily. Mara felt ice move through her chest. They were not planning to help Dante. They were planning to bury him alive in polite language. No blood on the carpet. No scandal. No shouted betrayal. Just signatures, doctors, lawyers, and family members wearing sorrow like expensive cologne. She stepped back. The floor creaked. Inside the room, the voices stopped. Mara's heart slammed against her ribs. She turned quickly, lifting the basket higher against her chest, and forced herself to walk, not run, down the corridor. Mara. Vincent's voice followed her like a hand closing around her throat. She stopped. Slowly, she turned. Vincent stood in the doorway, dressed in a navy suit, his smile soft enough to fool anyone who had not seen his eyes. Working hard, he asked. Yes, sir. His gaze dropped to the basket. Linen. Yes, sir. He walked toward her, each step quiet on the carpet. Behind him, the office door eased shut. You know, he said, my brother has always had a weakness for loyal servants. He mistakes obedience for devotion. Mara kept her face still. Vincent stopped close enough that she could smell mint on his breath. But loyalty is dangerous when it chooses the wrong person. Mara lowered her eyes. I only clean rooms, sir. His smile widened. Then clean them. Don't listen to them. The warning landed softly. That made it worse. Vincent reached into the basket and lifted a folded white towel, inspecting it as though searching for guilt between the threads. Then he placed it back. You're new here, he said. New people should be careful where they stand. Mara looked up then. Not boldly. Not foolishly. Just enough. My father used to say the same thing. Vincent tilted his head. Smart man. He was, Mara said. But he also said standing in the wrong place is still better than kneeling in the right. One. For a moment, Vincent's smile disappeared. There he was. The man beneath the silk. Cold. Small. Afraid. Then the mask returned. Careful, Miss Johnson. He turned and walked away. Mara waited until his footsteps faded before moving again. Only when she reached the laundry room did she allow herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking now, but not from fear alone. From anger. She thought of Dante alone in the library, studying the board. She thought of the Black King surrounded, not defeated. She thought of her father's eyes in the hospital room, furious at a world that mistook stillness for absence. No, not again. That afternoon, while the mansion prepared for a private family meeting, Mara made her choice. She did not have a weapon. She did not have a name. She did not have power in the way they understood power. But she had eyes. She had memory. And she knew where Dante kept the small black notebook he wrote in every night after everyone thought he was asleep. So when the house grew quiet and Vincent's men began gathering in the East Wing, Mara walked toward Dante Castellano's library with the first piece of truth in her hands. This time she knocked, and from behind the door, his voice came calm and waiting. "Come in." Mara put the truth in his hands. Mara stepped into the library with the kind of quiet that carried danger. Not the danger of weapons. The danger of truth arriving before betrayal was ready. Dante Castellano sat by the window, facing the pale afternoon light. The city beyond the glass looked washed and distant after the storm, its towers rising through mist like silent witnesses. A chessboard rested beside him, exactly where Mara had left it the night before. The black bishop still stood where he had placed it. The white queen still lay fallen on the marble board. Dante did not turn immediately. "You heard something," he said. It was not a question. Mara closed the door behind her. For a moment, her hand stayed on the handle. She could still walk away. She could still pretend the linen basket had been only linen, the voices only voices, the warning from Vincent only another rich man's cruelty. But some silences became sins when you chose to keep them. She crossed the room. In her hand was a folded sheet of paper she had found tucked beneath the linen closet door after Vincent's meeting. Someone had dropped it, or hidden it badly, or maybe God had grown tired of watching cowards use paperwork as a knife. Mara placed it on Dante's desk. "I don't know if this matters," she said, her voice low. "But your name is on it." Dante rolled closer. His hand moved over the paper, calm and steady. He unfolded it once. Then again. Mara watched his eyes move line by line. No shock crossed his face. That frightened her more. A man surprised could still be innocent of what came next. But Dante did not look surprised. He looked confirmed. The document was titled cleanly, professionally, almost politely. Emergency Transfer of Operational Authority. Under it were paragraphs dressed in legal language. Temporary leadership. Medical advisement. Family protection. Stabilization of assets. Beautiful words. Ugly purpose. At the bottom was a space for Dante's signature. Already marked. Already prepared. Mara swallowed. They said the council would accept it tonight. Dante's eyes remained on the page. And Vincent? He said permanent things begin temporarily. A silence fell. Outside the library, the mansion continued breathing around them. Somewhere distant, a servant closed a cabinet. A clock ticked above the mantel. The world did not yet understand that its balance had shifted. Dante folded the document carefully. Too carefully. Like a priest closing a book before judgment. "Did he see you?" "Yes, sir." Now Dante looked at her. The air sharpened. "What did he say?" Mara clasped her hands in front of her to stop them from shaking. "He told me new people should be careful where they stand." Dante's gaze lowered, not to her uniform, not to her trembling fingers, but to her feet planted on the carpet before him. "And where are you standing, Miss Johnson?" The question entered the room softly. But Mara knew it was the most dangerous thing he had asked her yet. She thought of Sophia's warning. She thought of Vincent's smile. She thought of her father in that narrow hospital bed, his eyes burning with the pain of being spoken over by people who called it care. Then Mara lifted her chin. Beside the person they're trying to erase. For the first time that day, Dante's expression changed. Not much. A slight narrowing of the eyes. A breath drawn slower than before. The smallest crack in the stone. Respect did not always arrive as warmth. Sometimes it arrived as attention. Dante opened the drawer of his desk and removed a black leather notebook. Mara had seen it before, always near his right hand, always closed when others entered. He placed it beside the document. Then he opened it. Page after page revealed names, dates, transactions, overheard promises, small betrayals recorded with patient precision. Vincent, Salvatore, Luca, Isabella, the lawyer, Carver Hale, a doctor who had signed reports after meeting Dante only once. Mara stared. "You knew," she whispered. Dante turned a page. "I suspected." "Then why let them continue?" His eyes lifted to hers. "Because suspicion makes noise. Proof makes silence." Mara felt the words settle over her skin. He had not been helpless. He had been waiting. All the humiliation, all the pity, all the soft hands placed on his wheelchair without permission, all the people speaking over him at dinner, smiling as they measured the distance between his body and his throne. He had let them reveal themselves. Stillness for surrender. That was their mistake. Dante took the document Mara had brought and slid it into the notebook. Then he reached for the phone on his desk and pressed one button. A man answered almost immediately. "Yes, boss." Dante's voice was quiet. "Bring me the council records from March, the original medical file, and the security footage from the East Wing." A pause. "Then, tonight." Dante looked at Mara. "No," he said. "Now." He ended the call. The words seemed to remain in the room after the phone went dark. Now. Not later. Not someday. Not when he recovered enough to make others comfortable. Now. Dante rolled toward the chessboard and picked up the fallen white queen. He turned it once between his fingers, then set it upright beside the black king. "Tonight, they will ask me to sign away my power," he said. Mara stood very still. "And what will you do, sir?" Dante looked toward the door of the library, where beyond the wood, his family was already preparing the room where they believed his reign would end. His face became calm, almost peaceful. That made him terrifying. "I will let them speak first." Mara understood then. The trap was no longer being set for Dante. It had turned around. He looked back at her. "When the meeting begins, you will not stand in the corner." Mara's breath caught. "Sir, you will not lower your eyes. You will not pretend to be invisible. Not tonight." He closed the black notebook and placed his palm over it. "Tonight, Miss Johnson, you stand beside me." The room went silent. And for the first time since she entered that mansion, Mara understood that she had not come there only to clean what others had dirted. She had come to witness the moment a fallen king reminded the world that he had never left the throne. They thought he came to sign the East Hall had been prepared like a courtroom pretending to be a family room. Long curtains were drawn across the windows, shutting out the pale evening light. The chandelier above the conference table burned bright, throwing gold over polished wood, silver pens, untouched water glasses, and a folder placed exactly at the center of Dante Castellano's seat. His seat. The one Vincent had chosen not to remove. That was the first insult. They had left the chair at the head of the table, the high-backed leather chair Dante had used for years, knowing he could no longer sit in it without help. Knowing everyone would see the empty throne before they saw the man. Vincent stood beside it when Dante entered. Smiling. Always smiling. Around the table sat the people who believed they had survived the old king. Salvatore Moretti with his thick hands folded over his stomach. Luca with his expensive watch flashing beneath the chandelier. Isabella in a cream dress, her face arranged into sorrow. Carver Hale, the family lawyer, sat with a pen already uncapped. Behind them stood men who had once lowered their eyes when Dante passed. Tonight, they looked directly at him. That was their second mistake. Dante rolled into the room alone. Not pushed, not guided, not carried like a relic from a better time. The soft sound of the wheels against the floor seemed louder than any footstep he had ever taken. And beside him walked Mara Johnson. The room noticed her immediately. A few faces frowned. One man looked offended, as if dignity had entered through the servant's door without permission. Vincent's smile tightened. "Dante," he said, spreading his arms. "We were just about to send for you." Dante stopped at the head of the table. Mara stopped beside him. Not behind. Beside. Carver Hale cleared his throat. "Miss Johnson, this is a private family matter." Dante did not look at the lawyer. "She stays." 2 words. Quiet. Final. The room shifted. Vincent gave a soft laugh, smooth enough to hide irritation from careless people. Mara was not careless. "Of course," Vincent said. "If my brother wants his help nearby, we all understand." Mara felt the insult land. Dante did not turn his head. "Begin." Carver slid the folder forward. "Mr. Castellano, given your recent medical condition and the recommendations of your physicians, the family has prepared a temporary transfer of operational authority. This protects your interests while allowing you to recover without unnecessary stress." Dante looked at the folder, then at Vincent. "Temporary." Vincent placed one hand over his heart. "Only until you're well." "And who decides when that is?" A pause. Carver answered too quickly. "A medical panel." Dante's fingers rested on the armrest. "What doctors?" Carver blinked. "The names are listed in the document." "I asked what doctors." The room cooled. Vincent leaned forward. "Brother, this isn't an interrogation." "No," Dante said. "Not yet." The words moved across the table like smoke before fire. Lucas shifted in his chair. Salvatore looked down. Isabella's hand tightened around her glass. Vincent's smile thinned. "We are trying to help you," he said. "Everyone here agrees the family needs stability." Dante looked around the table slowly. "Does everyone here agree?" No one answered. That silence was louder than betrayal. Vincent reached for the folder and opened it, turning to the signature page. "All you need to do is sign. Keep your dignity. Rest. Let people who can still move freely handle what must be handled." Mara felt heat rise in her chest. But Dante remained still. He looked at the pen. Then he said, "It is interesting." Vincent sighed. "What is?" Dante lifted his gaze. "When I walked into rooms, men lied carefully." His voice was soft, almost thoughtful. "Since the accident, they've become lazy." The room went still. Dante turned slightly toward Mara. She opened the black leather notebook and placed it on the table. Carver's face changed first, then Salvatore's, then Vincent's. Mara laid the emergency transfer document beside it. The same document. The earlier draft. The one they thought had disappeared into shadows. Dante touched the paper with one finger. "This draft was prepared before my second surgery," he said. "Before any doctor declared me unfit. Before anyone in this room had the courage to say aloud what they were already planning." Vincent's face hardened. "Where did you get that?" Dante ignored him. He turned a page in the notebook. "Carver Hale. Payment received from Vincent's private account, 3 days before my medical report was revised." Carver went pale. Another page. "Dr. Emilio Varga. Signed a recommendation after a 12-minute examination. Security footage shows he spent 9 of those minutes speaking with Vincent in the hallway." Dr. Varga, seated near the far end, looked toward the door. No one opened it for him. Another page. "Salvatore Moretti. East Harbor accounts redirected through a shell company controlled by your son." Salvatore's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Dante looked at Luca. "And you?" Luca swallowed hard. "You told the table people don't fear a man they have to push." Dante's eyes darkened. "You were wrong, Luca." The young man dropped his gaze. Dante closed the notebook. The sound was small. The effect was not. Vincent stood straighter, the mask finally cracking. "You can't do this," he said. Dante looked up at him. "I already did." No one moved. No one breathed. The empty leather chair at the head of the table no longer looked like a throne. The wheelchair did. And beside it, Mara Johnson stood with her hands folded, eyes steady, watching. Every person in the room realized they had mistaken stillness for defeat. The room went silent. Power never lived in his legs. Vincent Castellano's mask finally broke. Not all at once. First, the smile disappeared. Then the warmth left his eyes. Then the man who had spent months pretending to be a grieving brother stood exposed beneath the chandelier. Not strong, not loyal, not patient. Just hungry. "You think a notebook makes you powerful?" Vincent said, his voice sharp now. "You think old records and servant gossip will make them follow you again?" No one corrected him. No one dared. Dante sat still at the head of the table, his hands resting on the arms of his wheelchair. The black leather notebook lay before him like a judge's final sentence. Mara stood beside him, silent. Vincent pointed at the chair. "Look at yourself, Dante. You can't even stand to address your own men." A few people lowered their eyes. The cruelty in the room had finally lost its perfume. Dante looked at his brother for a long moment. Then he said, "Power was never in my legs." The sentence landed softly. That made it worse. Dante turned his wheelchair slightly, facing the table as if every person there belonged to his courtroom now. "Power is in memory," he said. "In patience. In knowing who reaches for your crown when they think your hands are too weak to hold it." Vincent's jaw tightened. Dante opened another folder. "Carver Hale, you are removed from all family business. Security will escort you out." Carver stood too quickly, almost knocking over his glass. No one helped him. Dante looked at Salvatore. "East Harbor returns to direct oversight. Your son will repay what he moved, or he will spend the next decade explaining it to people far less patient than I am." Salvatore's face drained of color. Then Dante turned to Luca. The young man could not meet his eyes. "You wanted to know if people fear a man they have to push," Dante said. Luca swallowed. Dante's voice lowered. "They should fear the man who hears them when they think he is beneath them." The room froze. Finally, Dante looked at Vincent. His brother stood near the empty leather chair, the chair he had left. "There is an insult." "Vincent Castellano," Dante said, "you are relieved of every duty, every account, every key, every command. You will leave this house tonight. Vincent laughed once, desperate and ugly. You can't throw me out. This family needs someone who can move. Dante's eyes did not change. And yet everyone in this room has been standing for 10 minutes, he said, waiting for a man in a wheelchair to decide their future. No one breathed. Mara felt the words move through the room like thunder with no sound. Dante turned his head toward her. She saw what none of you did, he said. Not because she had power, because she had respect. Every eye shifted to Mara. For the first time, they truly saw her. Not the uniform, not the tray, not the servant they could dismiss with a glance. Her. Dante's voice softened, but only slightly. Miss Johnson was the only person in this house who did not treat me like I had disappeared. Mara lowered her eyes by instinct. Dante noticed. Do not bow your head, he said. She looked up. The room went silent. Dante faced them again. A family that cannot recognize dignity in the people who serve it does not deserve loyalty from anyone. No one answered. Because there was nothing left to say. The empty chair remained behind him, useless and grand. The wheelchair stayed beneath him, quiet and undeniable. And that night, everyone in the room learned the difference between a man who had lost his steps and a king who had never lost his throne. The wheelchair became a throne 3 weeks later. The Castellano mansion no longer whispered when Dante entered a room. It stood. That was the first thing Mara Johnson noticed. Not the silence. Silence had always followed Dante Castellano. Before the accident, it had followed him like fear. After the accident, it had followed him like pity. But now, it followed him like respect. When the doors of the private conference room opened, men in tailored suits rose from their chairs before the wheels crossed the threshold. No one rushed behind him. No one reached for the handles of his wheelchair. No one spoke over him, around him, or through him. They waited. Dante rolled himself to the head of the table. The empty leather chair was gone now. In its place was space. Not an absence. A recognition. Mara stood near the doorway with a folder in her hands, no longer pretending to be invisible. Dante had promoted her the morning after Vincent was removed from the house. Officially, she managed the domestic staff. Unofficially, everyone understood something deeper. She protected the dignity of the rooms people thought servants did not own. Sophia had cried when she heard the news, though she tried to hide it by polishing silver that was already shining. You earned this, she told Mara. Mara had only shaken her head. No, she said softly. I remembered what people forgot. Vincent was gone. Carver Hale was gone. Salvatore remained, but quieter now, his arrogance clipped down to something close to obedience. Luca had sent a written apology on thick cream paper. Dante read it once, then handed it to Mara. What do you think? He asked. Mara looked at the perfect handwriting, the expensive ink, the carefully chosen words. I think he is sorry he was heard. Dante almost smiled. Good answer. Life in the mansion changed, but not in loud ways. The staff dining room received new chairs that did not wobble. Wages were raised without announcement. A rule appeared on the wall near the service entrance. No one touches another person's chair, cane, body, or belongings without permission. No one asked who ordered it. They knew. One evening, after the final meeting ended, Mara found Dante by the tall window in the library. The sunset burned gold across the city, laying light over the arms of his wheelchair until the metal looked almost royal. The chessboard sat beside him. The Black King was still standing. Mara placed a cup of coffee near his right hand, handle turned toward him. Dante looked at it, then at her. You still notice everything. Mara smiled faintly. Only the things people think don't matter. He turned back to the window. For months, they looked at me and saw only what I lost. Mara stood beside him. They were never looking at you, sir. A quiet passed between them. Not empty. Full. Dante's voice lowered. You saw me when the whole world looked through. Me. Mara shook her head gently. No, Mr. Castellano. I just didn't forget you were still there. Outside, the city lights began to wake one by one. Inside, the mansion held its breath, not in fear this time, but in understanding. And that day, the world remembered that dignity does not need to stand in order to rise.